This is the Talkin Bout the Hoosiers podcast, presented by HoosierIllustrated.com. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Talkin Bout the Hoosiers podcast, presented by HoosierIllustrated.com. I'm joined by Kyler Staley, I'm Drew Rosenberg, and once again, I feel like I'm saying this a lot, we have another emergency podcast.
Another one.
Yeah, it's like DJ Khaled, another one, every time. But we should just add that to the intro, but this time, it's Bellarmine transfer center Langdon Hatton joining the Hoosiers this year. North Harrison High School product, so an Indiana native. Kyler, you've watched him since high school. I guess what are your initial takeaways from him joining the roster?
Yeah, so with Indiana knocking out the major needs, the key needs, with the point guards, the shooting, finding another big to replace Khalil Ware. This was once you finished all and getting all those pieces, you needed another big just to kind of fill out that front court rotation, a serviceable big that, would be probably willing to play inconsistent minutes, like 10 to 12 minutes a game, maybe not play, certain games. But Langdon Hatton is probably the best for that kind of fit right there. You needed another front court piece, and you got that. So like you mentioned, he's an Indiana native from North Harrison High School, had a really good high school career. I think he was an all-star, Indiana all-star, if I can remember correctly. So, he's just a serviceable big. He spent one season at William & Mary out of high school, had offers from, I think, Ball State, coming out of high school. And then he ended up transferring to Bellarmine, which Bellarmine's a pretty, I think, underrated program because they always consistently get really good players, especially around the state. So he fit really well in that system. He comes in more of a true big, I would say. At least that's what his strength is, but he is also a guy that, is capable of stretching the floor out a little bit. So, Mike Woodson wants his bigs to be versatile. For the most part, you've seen it with Race Thompson, Malik Renew, Khalil Ware. You've seen it with those guys. So Langdon can do that. He can come in and play either the 4 or the 5, honestly. He'll probably majority play the 5 at times when Umar Ballow's out or something like that. And he'll be a really good rebounder as well. He was one of the best rebounders, especially on the defensive end in the ASUN conference last year. So I think he had a defensive rebound rating of like 21.7. So really, really good. 7 1-point rebounds a game as well, 6 in the league. So he's going to really help in that area. And Indiana always really needed to get improvement when it comes to the glass. I've been saying that for the past few years and stuff, but they really needed to improve in that area. And I think he's going to help with that. But it's it's not an earth-shattering pickup by any means, just being honest here, but it's a one that they really needed just to fill out some roster spots.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Renew. I feel like Langdon Hatton, he adds a little bit. It's a different look as a big compared to Umar Ballo, compared to Malik Renew. I mean, you look at Ballo. Ballo's more of the intimidating force, the presence inside. I don't think there's a player in the country who's going to be able to push Ballo around. Then you have Renew, who's a little more skilled, technical in the post, working out of the post, can stretch the floor a bit. And then Langdon Hatton, who's a little smaller than both of them, I guess, frame-wise, and he can space the floor. And it seems like that's something he's kind of added to his game, that jump shot. I mean, his first 2 seasons in college shot 10 total threes. His last year, Bellarmine shot 45 on 33% from 3. So it's something that, could be a nice little wrinkle to space the floor, especially as Indiana has added more shooting on the roster this year.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, it was a really good point. You mentioned it's kind of a different look, in the front court area and stuff. So Bellarmine's system, he was able to shoot threes, but not as many as he kind of wanted to probably. Within Mike Woodson's system, he's not going to say no to the guys that want to shoot threes. Mm-hmm. He's just not. He's not going to say no. If you've got an open look, he's going to do that. And I think the defense probably isn't going to respect his jumper quite, well. I feel like the defense really didn't respect Khalil Ware's jumper last year, and he was able to knock down threes, pretty consistently. So, and I think Langdon will have that opportunity. But you mentioned he's got the length. He definitely has the length. I think he's nearly 7 foot, 6'10", somewhere around there. He's got the length. The frame, a little skinny. So I'm really curious to see how he's going to be able to match up with the Big Ten bigs in a way, because, a lot of those are big, physical, bigs. So I'm curious to see if he can kind of match up with the physicality there as well. But yeah, it's a different look. I do expect Indiana to run a lot of things where you see Mackenzie and Baco at the 4 next year. I think they figured out that worked and stuff. So, but you need a backup big just in case of foul trouble. Malik Renew, still can't trust him right now until you see what he can do next year. He's going to be in. You're going to expect him to be in foul trouble quite a bit of time. Same with Omar Ballo. You just got to kind of, have an emergency in case of an emergency break glass situation. I think Langdon is kind of that. Plus, he's an experienced big too, so you get that. He's been around the block. He's played against some tough games. I know he looked really good when they played Louisville a lot of the past few years as well. So you get that. He has 1 year of eligibility, if I can remember correctly.
Yeah.
So he has 1 year of eligibility. So you're only going to get him for 1 year. And I think, honestly, most importantly of all, he's an Indiana guy. He knows what the Indiana basketball program is all about. He knows what that culture is. And, Mike Woodson needed to have a good mix of just talent from, across the country, as well as guys that have been, from the state. Now you've got total of 4 guys right now that are from the state on the team. So, and obviously we know what Mike Woodson's doing for the 2025 class, recruiting the state really, really hard as well. So you just get that nice mix. And honestly, I think this is a really good spot for Langdon as well. He could have went somewhere where he was going to get, starting minutes right off the bat and stuff. But I think he wants to finish out his college career pretty strong. And he wants to be on a winning team. And Mike Woodson's Indiana team this year looks like they're going to be winners. So this is a good spot for him. It's a really good pickup by Indiana. Curious to see what they do with that final scholarship, though. That's going to be the question mark. You've got all your pieces, really. And we'll just kind of see, do they fill that? Do they not? Well, what are they going to do? So five transfers, in the offseason. I think that's what it was. So, Mike Woodson just did a fantastic job, with this recruiting class, in the offseason. So he's getting a lot of things done.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. He's filled pretty much every need, and there's, still one roster spot left. He's filled out the front court. Just replenished the backcourt with a ton of talent, added shooting. I think when you look at it, last year Woodson elected not to fill that final roster spot, and I think looking back, he might think, yeah, that probably wasn't the best idea considering the injuries the team faced, losing Xavier Johnson, Khalil Ware, Malik Renew, all missed games at some points. So it's just one of those things. I would be very surprised if Woodson elects not to fill that final scholarship spot. I could see him going to, they missed out on Hemingway, but maybe go to a similar archetype of a player, maybe a stretch four, someone who could come in and kind of just come in spot minutes, because when you look at the roster, there's a lot of guys that demand a lot of minutes already. So I'd be very surprised if they're able to bring in someone who's going to demand big minutes just because of that. So it's just someone who can fill a little niche on the roster that isn't covered, but like add a little something, whether it's shooting, rebounding, something like that, to, I guess, give more depth in a just in case, like the break glass scenario.
Yeah, for sure. I strongly believe that they need to fill that scholarship. Yeah. There's no reason not to in this day and age of basketball. You saw what happened with injuries. They probably could have really used, that last scholarship last year when it comes to especially the backcourt for them. So, the backcourt is pretty clogged right now. You've got about 5 guys that, are probably going to play some backcourt minutes, pretty strongly. The wing spots are pretty, jam-packed as well. So now you got the front court pieces who they've got 4. It's just kind of what Mike Woodson feels, they need. What is some more depth? Yeah. I think more of a hybrid wing, a utility player somewhere around here. Hemingway would have been great in that role. Obviously, they just didn't land him. So, but I'd like to see Mike Woodson maybe go after somebody that would know his role right off the bat. There wouldn't be any surprises with him or whatever. Maybe a guy that has, multiple years of eligibility that they can just kind of bring in, maybe develop. Mike Woodson's big on developing players as well. So maybe they can get someone like that they can just develop, let them, sit on the bench, have really, really inconsistent minutes, and just kind of learn and take things in. And then, next year they can trust him a little bit more. So, it'll be curious to see if Mike Woodson does fill that scholarship. I don't think he's in any big of a hurry right now. And you've also got the idea of there could be another high school decommit, you never know right now. So it's a good spot to be in right now for Indiana. Now they can focus on high school recruiting. They can put their sole focus on high school recruiting, and then they can just kind of see if maybe the opportunity comes for them to fill that last scholarship. But if you're an Indiana fan, or even if you're the Indiana program, you got to feel really good where you're at right now, because now you can go in, you can get a head start again on the high school recruiting, and then while the other teams are still trying to fill out their rosters. So good pickup with Langdon Hatton. He's going to be serviceable. So we'll just kind of see what that front court rotation looks like next year.
Yeah, we talked about it. Talent and fit last year. A lot of talent on the roster just wasn't very cohesive. This year, or next year, I guess I'm looking at the roster just before the season even starts. I think it's fair to say it's a lot more talented. And I also think it's might fit a little better too. I mean, you got the guys that can score off the dribble, guys who can catch and shoot. You have Cannon Carlisle, who's a great catch and shoot guy. Luke Goody, um, Mackenzie Mbako, who should take a step in his sophomore year. You have a dominant big in Umar Ballo and Malik Renew, who was a very good last year. And I think Malik Renew is starting to go under the radar, as crazy as that sounds, after averaging 16 and 6 last year. It seems like everyone is glossing over the fact that he's returning. So I think you look at the roster, it's a really good mix of talent, but also cohesiveness. And then you have the leaders in Trey Galloway, Anthony Leal. Not sure how much we'll see Anthony Leal on the court next year with all these new additions, but his presence might not like show up on a stat sheet, but it's going to be very, very important to how far this team goes next year. And when you look at the roster, the talent is there for this team to compete for a Big Ten championship and even maybe a Final Four national championship. It's just how they fit together. And the other thing, you got to get a little lucky. Let's call it how it is.
Yep.
You got to be lucky. You got to stay healthy. Indiana last 2 years hasn't really been able to stay healthy. Has lost, I guess, starting Xavier Johnson both years to injuries. So all those things need to happen. But you look at what Mike Woodson's done in the offseason. He's done everything right. He's can do right now.
Yep. And I will make this strong hot take, I guess. It's not really a hot take, but I think this is the most balanced roster that Mike Woodson's had so far at Indiana. There are a lot of pieces there, a lot of pieces that work together, that fit together. You got a couple wild cards in Ja'Kai Newton and Bryson Tucker as well. So that's pretty nuts to say when you got a McDonald's All-American. Yeah. You really don't see where his minutes are going to be. So it's really well balanced. I like what you said about Malik Renew. He is a little under the radar, but he's also a guy that could be an all Big Ten player. So it's very exciting. It's very exciting to see what this team can do. There's no excuses. No more excuses anymore. No excuses. It's time to see what Mike Woodson can do. Langdon Hatton fits well here. So, and then we've got a bunch of stuff on Hoosier Illustrated as well. You know, I've got my scouting report up. Obviously, we'll have this up so you can rewatch it a bunch of times. So, and then we've got some highlight videos and stuff too, in case you haven't seen him play or anything. So, a lot of things on HoosierIllustrated.com, and I'm sure we'll have more and more in the next coming weeks.
Yeah, exactly. As always, for all things IU athletics, follow Indiana_FRN on Twitter, Facebook, and check out the HoosierIllustrated.com website and make sure to subscribe on both YouTube and Spotify. Hoosier Illustrated has also partnered with Tom Brady's company, Autograph, to streamline our coverage so you can do what you do best. Follow IU Sports. Use the code IndianaFR to get started today. Thank you for tuning in to the Talkin Bout the Hoosiers podcast, presented by HoosierIllustrated.com. We'll be back.